especially since most of the start of the meeting is just me talking through the administrative stuff. Uh, Great, recording started. We do have members of the public. So to kick us off today, I'd like to start with reading our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the Arapaho, Ute, and Cheyenne tribes, the traditional custodians of the land on which the Police Oversight Panel and the Boulder Police Department operate, and we pay our respects to their elders, past and present. And I want to welcome, I do see we have some members of the public with us here this evening, and I think I recognize some members of the press as well. I just want to thank you all for being here, for your attention to our work. We really do appreciate it. And of course, I want to welcome all panel members for being here as well this evening, for making the time for this work. And just want to acknowledge that it's a challenging time right now for many, if not all of us, for a variety of reasons. And so I just want to acknowledge that to make space for that. And just again, thank you for being here and making the time. For any members of the public, you may use the Q&A during this meeting if it's a quick question, related to this meeting, procedure, anything, but any bigger questions or comments that you may have, I'd ask that you please hold those for our public comment at the end of this meeting. We will be having public comment this evening, and thank you, Selena, for monitoring our Q&A this evening as well. Also, members of the public, if you'd like to submit a complaint or contact the panel outside of this meeting, our web address is bouldercolorado.gov/services/police oversight. You can also email the panel at policeoversightpanel@bouldercolorado.gov. Also a reminder too that these meetings are recorded and will be posted to the Police Oversight Panel's website. So if you ever need to refer to them later, or if panelists, you ever need to miss a meeting and need to get caught up, these meetings are available for you on the website. And a big thanks to our city staff for making that happen for us. Turn over and read our agenda for this evening. Ooh, excuse me, I have the wrong agenda up for today. It is not September. Here we go. Boulder Police Oversight Panel meeting, October 11th, 2023. Our agenda for this evening, first we will approve the September 13th, 2023 Police Oversight Panel meeting minutes. Then we will turn it over to any panel committee updates we might have. We also have a note here to address any upcoming schedule modifications to either the subcommittees, case reviews, trainings. Sherry and Hadassah and I have been talking about that, so we'll touch base on schedules. Then we'll get a quick ordinance update from Farah, and we're also going to discuss the contingency for the moratorium on our business if the ordinance does not pass next Thursday, October 19th. Then we'll hand it over to Sherry for the independent police monitor report. We'll get our case report. We'll get some updates on oversight, force review panel, the ADR, the website, and we'll get feedback on future IPM reports as well, any format or content. And after that, we will turn it over for public comment. Before moving forward, does anyone have anything they need to add to the agenda before we jump in today? And as a reminder to panelists, oh yeah, Milan, there you are.
Oh yeah, I just had a question about process, I guess, or some things that I may have missed in the past. I don't know what category that falls under. Maybe a process question, or
sorry, a process question about the agenda.
A process question about things that I was made aware during last meeting, and I was not aware before that. So I don't know unless I ask the question right now, but if you could give me like 2 minutes for a question at some point, that would be great.
If it's not related to something already on the agenda, why don't we circle back to it after the independent monitors report, if that works for you?
Yeah, that sounds great. Anytime is fine. Thank you.
Cool beans. Cool. But now I'm captured by suspense. Yeah, so we'll put that after the monitors report then. Panelists, any other quickies? Cool beans. In that case, we'll go ahead and jump in. Does anyone have any edits or questions about the September 13th meeting minutes? Cuckoo, cuckoo. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion.
So moved.
Thank you. I'll take Hadassah for the motion and Madeline for the second. Panelists, show of hands, all in favor of approving the September 13 minutes? Cool beans. Panel committee updates. Let's just do a quick round robin before we go. I touched base with Hadassah. We actually are going to cancel next week's governance committee meeting. I just want to make sure all panels, members, and public know, just because the ordinance definitely will not have been passed by then, and so we don't have anything else to do until it's passed. And then we're going to be jumping into some pretty in-depth bylaws work, and our plan is to come back to y'all with amendments, quite a few amendments to get our bylaws aligned with wherever the ordinance ends up. So that's governance. Yeah, Sherry.
I just quick looked on my calendar and it looks like Legacy is on the calendar for October 26th. So I don't know if that falls under the same issue of the ordinance won't be passed. Or maybe it will. I don't know.
It might be, yeah. So that's and Chico isn't with us this evening, but that would be a question for him. And there's a chance that yes, the ordinance will be passed on the 19th. So he'll be the one. Yes, maybe Selena and Sherry, if you want to follow up with Chico about that meeting, just to double check on it.
Okay,
Cool beans.
we will do that.
Okay.
Daniel,
Yeah,
it's Madeline.
it's Madeline.
I just have a comment and a thank you. You cannot send too many reminders. Okay. I mean, especially for me, I'm getting ready for all of these 2024 events, and my email is crazy. And so don't feel that you're bothering me. If you send me text messages, Milan usually keeps me up, and Hadassah, and I got the latest from Selena. I just wanted to thank you. That's all. Keep it up.
Thanks, Madeline. And we'll say off that too is that yes, Sherry and Selena, Hadassah and I have asked Sherry and Selena to start sending our meeting, making sure that all of our meetings as a panel are shared with all members of the panel, even if we don't need to be there. And just as a reminder, if you don't need to be at that meeting, you'll be popped into the optional section in Outlook. And so so that's just to make sure we all know all the meetings that are coming up, all that required. And then we also re-asked Selena and Sherry, something we started before the moratorium and we want to get into the habit of is also getting those reminders through the group text as well. Just keeping us appraised of what's going on, because I know we're not in our emails as much as city staff are. And so our emails and calendars log out periodically. And so I know sometimes those updates don't come through, or we're unaware that our calendar hasn't been updating for a few days. So those are our two stop gaps. However, I do want to raise, to think on it too, if there is any other way we can help facilitate reminders, or if you're getting, if calendar invites aren't working, keep us up to date. What's working for you, what we can do as co-chairs, as Selena, Sherry, what the four of us can do to help y'all keep calendars, because yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, Hadassah.
Would it be possible, just because it's been a minute since we've had committee meetings, so if the ordinance gets approved on the 19th, just to have a email that goes out reminding people which committees they are on?
Ooh, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, that should be pretty easy for us to do.
Awesome.
Sure.
I thought maybe if you want to link to the contact and committee spreadsheet we have as well, just as a reminder that we have that as a reference.
In SharePoint.
Yeah.
Sure. I thought you were going to take the time, that opportunity to offer other people to step up and join some of, or co-chair some of those committees.
Well, with that invitation, Sherry, yes, we are still looking for members of the governance committee if anyone's interested. Sherry, did you have anything else? Sorry, I know you.
I just wanted to say that since, you know, since there, you know, the panel has been on the moratorium, so a lot of these committees haven't met. And, you know, now there are, like, I'm a new staff person, Selena's a new staff person. I think there are some people on the committee who were only on the committee, who were only on the panel for a minute before it went on moratorium. But I would really suggest that everyone start thinking about whether the committees that they're on meets their schedules, like look to see what is currently identified on the website as the meeting times. But I consider this all just like up in the air, and we can change these. But I just want to make sure that we have that the times work as best as possible for the people who are involved, and that we have the time to update the website appropriately so that the public knows when those meetings are going to happen, and for Selena to put them on the calendars and figure out the reminders and all of that. But if you're, you know, if something doesn't work, especially when there's committees that are just like 2 people, you know, please let us know. We can change that. And along the same vein, I hope that people, when we meet in November, when hopefully, you know, we do have the ordinance passed and we're going full steam ahead, I hope people can come prepared, you know, with their calendars to figure out some standing dates that might work for slotting in some trainings and other things like that. So just more of a heads up. And also, I know that everyone's really concerned about, you know, open meeting laws, but my understanding is that conversations that are just about like logistics and scheduling, those can happen, you know, outside of public meetings and things like that. So, you know, if people want to get together on their own, or if Selena reaches out to you, like those, that's not a conversation that you have to worry about being in violation of open meeting laws. So, you know, if you want in the meantime to figure out what works for you and your other committee members or subcommittee members, you know, that sounds great. I see Soledad has her hand.
Yes, thank you. Just kind of, I heard you, Daniel, saying that the bylaws is kind of a work for the governance committee. I do think that it's important enough to be like a whole panel job type of thing. I'm not forcing anyone into participating, but I think like if we present it as governance committee and we're going to write the bylaws, I think it should be something that we should all be involved in some way or another.
Yeah.
Especially given, like, I think it has to catch up with the ordinance a lot, and it would be great to have kind of more perspectives on it. So
Yes.
you're not you two writing it. That's what I'm saying. You know, maybe you're not gonna do a great job, but it's pretty lonely.
Yeah, and so as a reminder too, the bylaws are written. We have our bylaws. The biggest thing is before the moratorium, we had accumulated quite a list of amendments that needed to happen in part, and this is the big one. The chairs, the committees actually need to finish writing out their sections of the bylaws as well, duties, responsibilities. And so that was one of the things, for example. And so, yeah, those governance committee meetings, they're open to anyone who wants to jump in, pitch in. And the way it's set up in the bylaws to edit the bylaws, the governance committee will solicit feedback, will draft language, and then we'll share them at these meetings with you all for feedback. And of course, this is core panel business, so those are public meetings. And even though it's just Adasa and I in these committee meetings, I believe, right, Adasa, we'll still keep these meetings public as well, because it's core business, it's important business. And so then we bring those amendments back to the panel for feedback and then before voting. Does that make sense to you too?
Yes, yeah. So all of those meetings are public, and the governance committee does not have the authority to change the bylaws by themselves. It is only by vote in the panel.
100%. Yeah. nothing changes in the bylaws until we all vote for it, with feedback too, of course. But yeah, like I said, governance committee could use some more people. So if you're interested, please join us. That would be awesome. I want to get back to schedules in a second. Thank you, Sherry. But first, I want to check in with communications and community engagement just to see if they have any updates before we move to the next agenda item.
We did not meet this month due to the city council meeting, so we have no updates.
Cool beans. Boom. Okay. So yes, upcoming meetings. So Sherry, Dasa, and I, we met last week to talk about a lot of things, but one of the things we talked about is upcoming schedules. And so what we kind of wanted to bring to y'all was a conversation in particular about trainings and how we've done trainings in the past. And so for past trainings, the way we scheduled those was kind of a bit of a quasi doodle poll of asking folks when they're available. Usually we ended up meeting on, or maybe always, but usually we ended up meeting on the weekends, weekend mornings, to have our trainings in a 3 to 4 hour block. But something, I don't know, actually, I'll just hand it to you, Sherry. You had recommended maybe we just find a repeating Saturday throughout the year, and I'll just hand it over to you for that suggestion.
Yeah, my understanding from people is that scheduling is a challenge with panel members because we all have, you know, full lives and lots of other commitments. And my thought was that instead of always just trying to figure out, you know, a time to do a training or a case review meeting, to just put some slots on the calendar when it seems like people have the most availability, and just block those off. And then, you know, if a case review comes up or when we have a training to do, we just park it into one of those time slots. And if there isn't that sort of thing, then it just gets canceled. But I thought that would allow people, especially if anyone is taking like classes or anything, to have, you know, have stability and be able to look out farther on their calendar. Also with training, I was anticipating that trainings would be, when applicable, that they would be recorded and available for people who have to miss it, or for new panelists to get them up to speed on a training that happened prior to their joining the panel. But that's my idea. We certainly can talk about it more, hopefully at next month's meeting. But that just seems to be something to help people out with their, you know, vacation planning and their other commitments.
Beans, any initial thoughts? As Sherry said, we won't be able to put this in stone until our November meeting when the moratorium lifts. But any initial thoughts on that as we start to explore it as chairs and come back steaming, full steam? Cool. Have a think on it. Other updates related to schedules too. We are looking at getting back, we never got there, starting hybrid meetings, these meetings, holding them hybrid in a space where the community can join us in person or remotely. And same goes for us. If there's, you know, we'd want panelists to prioritize being there in person. But in those instances where it's just, you know, we're out of town or there's a challenge we're facing, being able to also tune in remotely as panelists, really like City Council does. And we were kind of looking at starting that next year, January, getting ourselves set up, giving us some time. And we were looking at Wednesday nights. We'd moved to Wednesday nights earlier because that looked like when council chambers would be available, which is the best room for this to happen, is my understanding. But that's also something to think about as well. If moving to, you know, those in-person / hybrid meetings on Wednesdays, if that's going to be particularly challenging for you as a panelist, let us know, and we could look at potentially revisiting that date. That being said, city calendars are jam-packed with fun and adventure, so there's only so much wiggle room we can work with. But I want to make sure we're considering everyone's schedules and needs. Yeah, Victor, I see the hand.
This is back to the earlier things Sherry was talking about, and also for just bringing on, we have some newer panel members here. But with the training expectations and stuff like that, is it reasonable to say that a full Saturday and other things would be almost like 12 hours a month? Is that kind of like where we're at versus like, oh, it's 4 to 6? It seems like it's more 10 to 12. So I just want to be realistic about that. And that's it.
Yeah, thank you for that, Victor. And that's really important because we're going to have a recruitment cycle coming up early next year as well. And that's an important question for the recommended ordinance changes with those training requirements. Is that a significant change in our time commitment as panelists that we need to start communicating? AB, with the for Thursdays, the reasons we moved off Thursdays because those are city council meetings, and so that was limiting the ability of members of the public and the panel to be able to attend city council meetings when necessary, in addition to the POP meetings. And of course, then the city council chambers wouldn't be available those evenings as well for us. And so that's why we used to meet on Thursdays, but it was creating trouble for folks. And so that's partly why we moved them off Wednesday as well, while also kind of eyeing that, someday we could return to in person on Wednesdays. Thank you for that, though. Yeah. Cool beans. Sherry, Dasa, anything else with schedule modifications we wanted to touch on?
I do want to know whether the IPM co-chair meeting, which was scheduled for, I think, next Monday, is going to be on Monday or on Tuesday, as we decided upcoming meetings, IPM co-chair meetings would be. It's
next week. We decided on Monday, right? Monday at 5:30.
Okay. It's just we had decided that meetings were going to be on Tuesday. Monday works better for me. So
well, we did it because of Halloween. Wait, never mind. Oh.
Either one works for me, so no preference.
Let's take care of that off. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we might have crossed our wires in trying to move off the Halloween and moved neck last week. So why don't we force circle?
Okay. Yeah, we can talk about that offline.
Thanks, Sherry.
I don't know if I think that was all I wanted to say about scheduling. Just, have an idea of your calendars for the November meeting.
And our goal, I should remind panelists too, our goal is to be able to plan out our whole year and be able to share the year of meetings with y'all as well, at least committee meetings and general public meetings and co-chairs meetings, so that we can be planning ahead as much as we can. And we've done that in the past, so trying to revisit that. Yeah.
Oh, actually, the November 8th meeting, Daniel?
Mm-hmm.
Is that's the one you have the commitment?
Correct. Yeah, so Dasa will lead that meeting. Yeah. Moving right along then, I will hand it over to Farah for an ordinance update.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm battling a little bit of a cold, so my voice sounds a little different. But it's good to see you all. It's good to see progress happening. I know there's probably some ambivalence of whether or not we would get here, but we are here. I mean, we're always going to get here, but maybe in the time that we thought we were going to get here. And less bruised, I guess. We're not as bruised as I maybe thought we would be. But it's good. It's moving forward. First reading was pretty just kind of parliamentary in terms of the legislative process that the ordinance has to go through. So essentially it was on the consent calendar. Very little comment from Council 1. There was one council member that requested, to hear from the work group when it comes up on the 19th. I'm trying to think of what another, there were some questions about, I think the packet, which I'm going to clear up in my presentation, but there really was very minimal comment on it. It passed on consent, but the biggest, obviously the biggest conversation in the public hearing will be on October 19th. So just in terms of logistics, there are two big items on the agenda. I think one is a budget matter, and then the second is the ordinance. I believe the budget item will probably go first. And then essentially, the way I understand the process to be, I will do a presentation to council, and I envision my presentation will be very similar to the presentation that I gave you all, with going into kind of detail about the ordinance. And then also obviously talking about feedback that we've received so far, feedback I received from them. And then the part that I don't know is when exactly they take public comment, but they obviously anticipate public comment on this specifically. And obviously the public hearing part, they will probably council members who ask specific questions of either the work group members or panel members. But I imagine it'll probably be work group members. And then there'll be, conversation at the dais between the council members. And so this is very different than what I'm used to in Chicago and Austin, but the way I understand it in terms of procedurally is that if there are changes to the content as written, then that more likely than not will lead to a third reading, which means that it'll go to the next council meeting, which would be November 2nd. So that allows some, I think that's 2 weeks, a week or two, for edits to be made. Is there a possibility that it could pass as is on the 19th? Yes. So I just want to put that out there, that is a possibility. And let me just kind of put out the possibilities as I understand them. Possibility number one, could it pass as is written as proposed? That's option A. That is a possibility. Could it pass on the 19th with some slight changes? I think there's a possibility of, particularly as it relates to the moratorium ending the next day, enacting like an emergency where they can be able to use their parliamentary procedures to be able to make some smaller changes and then pass as is on the 19th. So that's kind of like option B. And then option C is that if, there are pretty much any changes, small, medium, large, whatever, that would then come back to council on the third reading. What I'm hoping for is the third reading. If it goes to third reading, that is the last reading. I really don't want a fourth, fifth, or sixth reading. I'm hoping that we can wrap it up, but I can just tell you, just kind of, even though it's not inside baseball because this is a public meeting, people are watching, my briefings with council have been very positive. The feedback that I've received on the draft has been very positive. There might be like a few kind of tweaks here or there. But I do think that there's an intention that, if it can't be done on the 19th, then November 2nd is it. They've been very complimentary of the draft and the work that was done to put in there. And also very specific about, I feel like I shared this with the panel, but I've written at least 2 memos about community feedback that I've received through this process. And, they all appreciated that the feedback that we've received over the last 6 months were addressed in the draft. And so that was pretty positive. And the couple things I was asked to look into, but nothing really major. But I would say the general feedback from the council briefings that I've had have been pretty positive. So I say that to say, because I know you guys are talking about the moratorium today, that I feel pretty confident that if it doesn't happen on the 19th, I do think November 2nd is very, 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 very realistic. And that just the tweaks in between are probably going to be that substantive, but obviously important to be able to resolve on the 19th. I think Danielle asked me to address kind of how you should communicate to council members. I think that's kind of a personal choice for you. Obviously, you have your 2 minutes and you would sign up in the normal process if you so choose. But I think that also because this is something that directly impacts you in your role as panel members, I do think, you know, it would be appropriate for you to email council to tell them how you feel about it too, because they do encourage community members to do that. So if you're so inclined, I think sending an email to them ahead of time, and particularly if you can't make it too at the council date, you know, sending something ahead of time if you can. But definitely also, if you want to be more vocal about it, signing up, you know, at the very minimum for your, you know, the 2 minutes, to be able to speak ahead of time. And then, you know, obviously, I think some of you may have, you know, your own relationships with council members too, is also utilizing those, you know, relationships to have your own personal conversations. I would, you know, encourage you to do that as well. So those are kind of three options that I think are available to you, that I, you know, would encourage you to utilize to the extent that you're comfortable. If you're not comfortable saying anything at all, that's fine too. You know what I mean? But those are some options that I think are available for your consideration. Did that address what you asked me to address, Daniel?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So I think, you know, the other formality, and this, I should have asked this to Aaron to confirm, but my understanding is that if it's approved, I think it goes into effect within 30 days, but I do think that there's a parliamentary procedure where it can go into effect right away. So, you know, we can definitely, I can take that as a follow-up. I just forgot to ask Aaron that question. But, you know, we're moving in the right direction. We've had conversations about, you know, once this passes, to have kind of like a more deep dive training about it. So that's, you know, that's in the pipeline. The other thing that I want to make clear as day, and this is kind of giving you a little prelude to the conversation with council, or the presentation to council, is that, like, I want to dispel any perception that our train ends on either the 19th or November 2nd. No. The train keeps going, right? Our work continues, right? Because the draft and the passage of the ordinance is a huge accomplishment that we should all be proud of. And we might take a break so we can, you know, do something else for a little bit, but we're going to come back to the table because it's going to require us to work on policies. It's going to require us to implement some of the things that are suggested in the ordinance, right? For example, we've talked about this a lot. Like, there's a whole training section. We need to, you know, put the meat around the training section and figure out how we get training, particularly with onboarding, like a well-oiled machine. So there will be work that continues. Obviously, it won't be as like public in the way of the work group and all that. It'll be more kind of internal. But this work and the evolution of oversight and what you do as a panel does not stop at the passage. If anything, it probably revs it up a little bit, and that the work, you know, will continue to revolve to strengthen what you do and to give you, you know, the policy and the administrative support that you need to get it done. So the ordinance is just literally the first stop on the destination, if that makes sense. So I just want to make that very clear, that I hope that people don't think, oh, we passed the ordinance, we're good. No. There's still plenty of work that will need to happen as we move forward in terms of implementing all the aspects of the ordinance. And I think that's it, but I'm happy to either take questions now or wait until you have questions, however you want, Daniel.
Yeah, any questions for Farah, y'all? Yeah, Milan.
I just have a quick question, Farah. You said 30 days to come into effect. Is it coming into effect after 30 days, or with the possibility of going into effect immediately, or is it within 30 days? It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But I just
I have to ask Aaron, because I think what happens is that, like, so if let's say they pass it on the 19th, and it could on October 19th, and it would go into effect November 19th, is my understanding, or they can utilize a parliamentary procedure where it can go into effect on October 19th. So I just need to ask, kind of, because those are like so in the weeds with, you know, the policy procedure. I just want to ask Erin Poe, and I'll send an email once I get that confirmation to everybody, so everybody knows. I just forgot to ask her before the meeting.
No, got it. Thank you. Thanks.
And off that too, the co-chairs through also requested that city council on part of the contingency request is one way or another the ordinance work the moratorium doesn't lift and business doesn't resume until the new ordinance has been passed. And I think part of that is just because confusion to try to operate under either an ordinance that hasn't been passed, isn't in effect, or for us to go to a third reading with the moratorium lifted. And so DASA did send that request over to Nuria this week. And so we really look forward to hearing how city council handles that on Thursday.
I actually I didn't see the email to Nuria. But so I don't know if the panel needs to make like an agreement about that that is the way that you want to proceed.
So when we voted for ourselves, we said that our moratorium ended when the ordinance was revised and in effect, the new ordinance. The city council approval of our moratorium, or however they worded that, that's what ends on the 19th. And so the thing is, and I'm just speaking for me here, we didn't ask for city council to approve us. We said, this is what we're doing. That's what we're doing. And it ends for us when when the ordinance is voted into effect. Whether or not city council chooses to extend it through their things, it would be nice. And obviously that's why I sent the request to say this needs to happen so that, if there's any concern about city council not being approval or blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, we made the decision whether or not city council approved our moratorium anyway. So that's my stance. That's how I feel about it. If they don't extend it, that would be messy for them. That might cause problems. And I hope that they have recognized that. But from what I've heard from Nuria, there is not the belief, like there's a lot of confidence that it'll be voted in on the 19th. And so, but the language will be, so if it isn't approved, then they will extend it for theirs.
Yeah. And thank you for that. In a brief discussion I had with Erin, she wanted me to get confirmation that that's how the panel that is how the panel wants to move forward, which is asking that if the ordinance does not pass on the 19th, that the council extend the moratorium. So that question seems to be answered, but the specific question now then would be, would you be asking that, would the panel be asking that the moratorium ends at the passage of the ordinance, which if it goes to third reading would be November 2nd, or possibly at the implementation and the effective date of the ordinance, which could be 30 days later?
Yeah, so our original vote was on passage in the spring. Thoughts? I mean, I from a practicality standpoint, it just seems we should resume when the new ordinance is in effect, especially for the PSU, for any other city staff that are working with the panel to have a clear understanding of which law is in effect, which wheels we start turning under which law, because if we resume trainings and case reviews under the current ordinance and then the new ordinance changes come into effect, I mean, I think just practically, it just makes sense that the moratorium should end when the new ordinance is in effect. And it sounds like there's a parliamentarian procedure that can make that the same day. So that would also seem to be efficient. Soledad, I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I got confused between what you all said and your question, Sherry. So that's how you sent a communication to the city manager. It was on like your personal opinion, your own behalf, or on behalf of the whole panel? And then are you asking if we should vote or yeah. I don't know if there was a question that we were supposed to answer all together and we missed. I'm not understanding really.
Sure. So just for clarification, what I said in my email is we voted to end our moratorium when the ordinance ends. And so my request was that when city council votes, their options are, yes, we approve, or no, and we're extending the moratorium. So they cannot vote no without extending the moratorium. That was my request.
Which is upholding the vote we took in the spring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, yeah, I get it, but
Yeah.
that is a email that you sent like personally to Nuria, right?
Yeah, Nuria. Mhm.
Okay.
And so then the question, this is sure if I'm getting it right, the question on top of that is this potential 30-day lag between the ordinance is passed, but it doesn't go into effect for 30 days. And I mean, my recommendation to city council, I mean, I know this is their business. My recommendation to city council is they put all 3 dates on the same day. Passage, enacted, moratorium ends, and we get out clean. But I also, you know, I'm not a lawyer or a city council member, but that seems pretty clean to me.
Hey, Daniel, I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you want to do Q&A right now? Did we have time to do Q&A right now, or did we want to wait? Because I do have a question by a community member, and I'm not sure how to answer it, or if we wanted to answer it together. No, I'm not sure if it's much of a question, but yeah.
Are you talking about the open one in the Q&A?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so no, that Lynn, thank
Okay.
you, but we'll have public comment at the end of this meeting where you can offer comments. Thank you so much. Thanks, Selena.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel, can we go back to Hadassah?
Yes.
And the letter she submitted? It seems to me that what she submitted supports what we did vote on in the spring as a group. So how do we, and while she submitted that as a personal opinion, right, Hadassah? Okay. What do we do to come back and say, while she submitted that as a personal opinion, it is the total stance of the panel?
That's what you're saying.
Because it supports what we agreed on and voted on in the spring, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I think Farah stepped away, and I'm not sure if the answer she's getting is about the voting. Is that what your answer was, Farah? About, is it around this or something else?
No, it is, it was kind of around this, but it's for example, if council chooses to pass this on the 19th as an emergency, it goes into effect on the 19th. If, for example, they make changes to it and it goes to third reading, and that's November 2nd, it can go into effect November 2nd if they pass it as an emergency. So the parliamentary thing that I wasn't familiar about that I'm mentioning is if they pass it as an emergency, then it's effective immediately, right? If they don't do it that way, then there is a time frame before effectiveness. Does that make sense? Because I was like literally texting everybody. I'm like, let me get this answer now. So that's the answer I just received.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help everybody? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how do we get on one accord in terms of what Hadassah submitted as an individual thing, while we all that was our collective decision?
Mhm.
How do we get that opinion, that collective opinion, restated?
So you could also email Nuria, just to kind of confirm with that, but let me just pull up the email real
That's
quick.
what I was trying to.
And so I can get just her exact words, because after reading her response back, I felt like there wouldn't be a question. Like that was what the options were going to be. But yeah, give me 1 second. Sorry.
And I'm seeing the email too. And Madeline, part of Hadassah's email was communicating recommunicating the panel vote and the intentions of the panel vote as well in that email. So while it was from Hadassah, she was recommunicating the vote we took. And so nothing has changed with our vote we've taken as well.
Okay, so that while it was from her individually, it still supported us as a panel.
Yes, yes.
Oh, cool. So that pretty much answers my question.
Yeah, and just so I can let you know, so Nuria said that she would alert legal, so they have the language ready ready if they need it. But again, she said she was not concerned about it not being voted in on the 19th potentially. So we're looking good. Either it's going to be voted in or they're going to say no and we're going to extend and we'll re-vote again.
Okay.
And
Sounds like
and
it'll be effective immediately.
Okay, so that reply technically is to all of us.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I can forward it to everyone too if you all would like.
Would you please?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thanks both. Yeah, Sherry?
I'm just because this was a question that Aaron specifically asked me, and it is to find out, whether if we have to go to third reading, whether we want the language of an extension of the moratorium to involve, the passage of the ordinance or the effective date, because those can be different.
I would think so you're saying like what city council votes when they say no and we're going to extend, or sorry, when they're voting, they're going to say it's effective, or the moratorium ends on effective date, or the moratorium ends on passage date, right? That's
Exactly
what we're asking.
Exactly.
I get the sense. I mean, I would vote effective. What are y'all's opinions?
Yeah, if anyone has opposition to
Marlene's
effective, maybe
hand
raise that hand. But yeah, Milan.
Oh
Yeah, I would say effective. We don't want to have 30 days where we are floating between two things. So I think effective is more logical.
Thanks, Milan. And yeah, Sherry, if Erin has any questions for the panel too, she can also reach out to the co-chairs as well. I think it's important to make sure we're maintaining the independence of the monitor and the panel when it comes to legal decisions like this. Anyone else have any other questions, comments on this? Is anyone else thinking not effective date? I know we're really in the weeds here and we're not expecting to be. Cool. Okay, so yeah, Sherry, it sounds like effective date. And if Erin has any follow-up questions, she can reach out to Hadassah and I directly. Any other, sorry, circling back just to make sure we cover it, any other questions for Farah about next Thursday or process with the ordinance? Cool. Farah, one thing I was thinking too, maybe for like our November meeting, I hadn't heard that you were staying on beyond the ordinance passage. And so what you had talked about before, that's first I've heard about the work to come after the ordinance. And so maybe next November we should have we should touch base if there's a presentation, if we can walk through what that structure is going to look like for the panel as well. Just because that was new information that there was a significant amount of work we were going to do post ordinance, and just wondering if there's someone from the city who wants to talk more about what that looks like and what that structure is.
So I'm on board until the end of the year, and one part of my scope of work is training. So that part we just haven't really gotten to yet because our focus has been the ordinance. So I'm hoping to transition to kind of helping Sherry solidify the training, particularly training / onboarding. So that for me will be the next step. However, I need to put a however. We do have, obviously potential selection imminent too. So it might be like a parallel, because we're going to have to develop processes, if the selection process changes for that too. So that will maybe a parallel conversation as well. So that's what I mean by that, where it's like, you know what I mean, with the stuff that changes, we'll have to develop like, you know, kind of what the standard operating procedures or policies around it. Remember how I told you guys about how like it was such a big deal to put the authority for you to review critical incidents in the ordinance? Like that just warms my heart, like to put that in there. I was like, that's such a big deal. However, remember I also told you that like we have no back end, you know, resources to figure out how we do that. Like we have to figure out that part. So that's what I mean by like we still have work to do, because we have to figure out how we give you the resources, both, you know, the panel and the monitor, to be able to review critical instances. We have to build that part out, like the back end. That's what I mean by that, is that, you know, we have expanded a little bit of your role, but we also have to develop policies around what that's going to look like. And that's what I mean by like the wheels are going to keep turning and we're still going to be moving. Like we're not at our destination just yet. Does that help explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, totally. And that's where I'm thinking like November, it might be like, great, ordinance is done. What next? Especially for public disclosure, transparency, just being clear of like, yeah, so we've passed the ordinance. What comes next? What are we working on now to implement? Cool.
I have a question.
Yeah, Madeline.
Sarah, so are we to understand that your departure date is 12/31/23?
I believe it's the end of December. Yes, ma'am.
Uh-huh. Okay, and what flexibility do we as a panel have within that date if we determine that there's a need for you to be here longer?
I would probably say that's a conversation with the city manager, maybe.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. I don't have anything up. I'm just saying, you know, my years of life tells me that things happen. And so we just want to be able to have the resources that we need to be effective, is how I'm thinking. Okay, thank you.
In other words, we like you, we want to keep you, and you didn't apply for the monitor's job. So how else can we keep you here, Farrah? Cool beans. Any other, okay, hoping to wrap this up now. Any other final thoughts for Farrah? Questions about this process with the ordinance? I look forward to seeing many of you next Thursday at the city council meeting, if you can make it. Milan, yeah.
I just want to say, Farrah, thank you so much. I mean, I know we don't say it enough. You've put a ton of work in this in moments that were absolutely the worst and the most difficult for you, and you still showed up, and we have this ordinance right now that we can all be proud of. So just want to say a big thank you to you for all this work. And I also want to say I love you. I love the work you do, and it's been really wonderful working with you. So just I'll have the opportunities to say that too, but there's a lot of love that you put in the work you give, and it's felt. So thank you.
Thank you.
And it's 7:26. Why don't we go ahead and take our 5-minute break now, and we will come back for our monitors report. So see you all back here at 7:32. Thank you very much. Okie panelists, we are back. Looking for cameras. Beans. All right. With that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to, and we did resume recording. Good. I'm going to hand it over to Sherry for our Independent Monitors Police Report.
Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay. Can everybody see the presentation? Okay, thanks. Okay, well, I'll share with you the Independent Police Monitors report for the October 2023 Boulder Police Oversight Panel meeting. Full case file reviews that were completed in September 2023 are 2. Full case file reviews completed and pending Boulder Police Department disposition, 1, and cases awaiting panel review are 2. Regarding case SM 2023-001, this complaint stemmed from an ongoing dispute between upstairs and downstairs neighbors in an apartment building. The downstairs neighbor told 911 that there was a violent domestic argument in the upstairs apartment. Officer 1 was among several officers who responded. The upstairs neighbor was with his son. He said he had been yelling at someone on the phone. The next day, the downstairs neighbor called again about screaming and cursing upstairs. Officer 1 responded alone. The upstairs neighbor was with his son and admitted to yelling at someone over the telephone. He said he was stressed out and told the officer about the downstairs neighbor previously threatening him with knives, and said that the night before, the downstairs neighbor complained about his kids' noisy toys and said, "You're lucky I don't shoot you guys," and spit in his face. Officer 1 did not ask follow-up questions. Later that day, Officer 1 was assigned to the upstairs neighbor's 911 call about the downstairs neighbor and did not document his response. This complaint, which the downstairs neighbor filed, was classified as serious misconduct based on Officer 1's disciplinary history. The allegations for Officer 1 were Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO 203, investigative responsibility and case assignment, did not conduct an adequate investigation. And the panel reviewed this case, and they sustained that allegation and recommended an 8-day suspension. The department also sustained the allegation and recommended and implemented a 7-day suspension and a performance improvement plan. The second allegation was Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders. General Order 201, report writing, did not document response to an incident to which the officer was assigned. The panel sustained this allegation and recommended an 8-day suspension, and the department also sustained the allegation with a 7-day suspension and performance improvement plan. Additionally, the panel recommended that the Boulder Police Department enhance training to ensure officers are on alert for individuals at risk or who may present a risk to others due to mental health issues, and take steps to connect these individuals at risk of eviction with social services. The police department responded that they will, 1, require the officer to attend the next available crisis intervention training, that's CIT class, and the professional standards unit will also coordinate with CERT to provide refresher briefing trainings to officers. In addition, the Boulder Police Department will explore expanding training provided by community resource representatives on matters such as housing issues. The panel also recommended that Boulder Police Department require officers to activate body-worn cameras during interactions with members of the public initiate, not just those interactions that the officers initiate, for the purpose of enforcing the law or violating possible violations of law. The department responded that they will consider this language prior to revisiting General Order 240, which is the in-car camera, body-worn cameras, and personal recording devices. For misconduct investigation 2023-004, a woman called 911 to report that her son had shoved her and locked her out of the house where she was visiting, and he was living with his two 4-year-old daughters. Officers 1 and 2 stood by while the mother used her key to enter the home and get her belongings. The mother wouldn't describe the physical encounter, but did describe events that made it seem like her son had jeopardized the safety of his children in the car the night before. The son, who is the complainant, is a licensed professional counselor who worked as a co-responder with the Denver Police Department. The officers broke the plane of the front door with their feet and called out to see if the son would speak with them. He eventually responded, told Officer 2 to shut the door and close the door in Officer 2's face. The officers subsequently learned that the children were not with the son the night before in the car and left. Officer 1 reported the incident to the man's ex-wife, with whom she had previously interacted, the Denver Police Department, which is the man's employer, and after speaking to a member of the CERT, filed a complaint with the Colorado Department of Regulatory Agencies. Allegations against Officer 1 were Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO 130, criminal process, entered an individual's home, and the independent police monitor recommended that this be exonerated, and the department also exonerated the allegation. Another allegation is Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO 201, report writing, prepared an inaccurate report. This allegation was not sustained as recommended by the independent police monitor and by the department. Rule 5, police authority and public trust, reported details of a police encounter involving an individual with the mother of the individual's children. The independent police monitor recommended this allegation be not sustained. The department, however, determined that it was exonerated. Rule 5, police authority and public trust, made a report regarding an individual to the Denver Police Department with which the individual worked. The independent police monitor recommended the allegation be not sustained, but the department determined that this was also exonerated. Rule 5, police authority and public trust, made a report regarding an individual to the individual's employer. Again, the independent police monitor recommended that this be not sustained, and the department determined that it was exonerated. Rule 5, police authority and public trust, filed a complaint regarding an individual, a licensed professional counselor with the Department of Regulatory Agencies. The independent monitor recommended not sustained. The department determined that it was exonerated. And Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO 101, unbiased policing and gender. The independent police monitor recommended not sustained, and the department determined that it was also not sustained. Officer 2 had a single allegation, which was Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO 130, criminal process, entered an individual's home. The independent police monitor recommended that the allegation be exonerated, and the department also determined that the allegation is exonerated. The independent police monitor also recommended that Officer 1 be counseled to obtain supervisory and/or legal advisor approval before making notifications to employers and regulatory agencies, etc. And the Boulder Police Department agreed to provide such supervisory counseling. For case MI 2023-012, Officers 1 and 2 saw a man using a car with expired license plates put trash in an apartment complex's dumpster. When he pulled out into the street, the officers stopped him. The man got out of the car and walked toward the officers, claimed he had not been driving the car and refused to provide his name, driver's license, and insurance, and asked to speak with the supervisor. The driver put his hands in and out of his pockets and started to walk away. Officer 1 frisked him, and the officers handcuffed him, detained him, and sat him down on the curb while they waited for Officer 3, a supervisor. Though the driver said he wasn't going to answer questions, he and the officers continued to speak. At one point, when the driver again refused to identify himself, Officer 2 asked whether they would have to play hangman. When Officer 3 arrived, he told the driver that he could identify himself or be taken to jail and fingerprinted, then released. The man consented to Officer 1 removing his driver's license from the driver's wallet. Officer 1 issued the driver a summons, and then the officers released the driver. Officer 1, the allegations against Officer 1 were Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, General Order 305, field interviews, pat-downs, and consent searches, frisked an individual. The panel reviewed this case, recommended that this allegation be not sustained, and the department determined that it was exonerated. Additional allegation, Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, General Order 305, field interviews, pat-down, and consent searches, detained an individual. The panel recommended that this allegation be exonerated, and the department also determined that it was an exonerated allegation. Rule 6, use of force, used force against an individual. The panel recommended that this allegation be exonerated, and the department also determined that it be exonerated. Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders. General Order 130, criminal process, questioned an individual. The panel recommended that this be exonerated, and the department also determined that it be exonerated. Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders. General Order 305, field interviews, pat-down, and consent searches, searched an individual's wallet. Both the panel and the department determined that this would be exonerated. Officer 2 allegations were Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, General Order 305, field interviews, pat-down, and consent searches, detained an individual. Both the panel and the department determined that this allegation would be exonerated. Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, General Order criminal process, questioned an individual. Again, both the panel and the department determined that this would be exonerated. And Rule 4, respect for others, referenced the game Hangman. The panel recommended that this would be exonerated, and the department also determined that it would be exonerated. And Officer 3 had Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, General Order 305, field interviews, pat-down, and consent searches, detained an individual. Both the panel and the department determined that this would be an exonerated allegation. In addition, the panel recommended that the Boulder Police Department counsel Officer 2 and other officers to avoid referencing the game Hangman because of society's current understanding of its racial connotations. The Boulder Police Department responded that the Professional Standards Unit counseled Officer 2 to avoid using the term hangman when communicating with the public, and that Officer 2 was receptive to that counseling. Case MI 2023-013. An individual visiting friends in an apartment complex called police regarding a physical altercation that took place between neighbors. The woman told officers that her upstairs neighbor had hit her with plastic flowers, cutting her finger. The man said his downstairs neighbor pulled out the plastic flowers from his garden, would not return them. They got into a tug of war, and the woman threatened him with and swung her cane at him. 4 individuals witnessed the incident, and 1 or more recorded it. While Officer 1 was speaking with the woman, Officers 2 and 3 did not ask for, view, or obtain the recordings because with the statements of independent witnesses, they felt they did not need it. The witnesses indicated that the woman was the aggressor. The man did not want to press charges, and the officers did not issue a summons or make an arrest. The woman filed a complaint and stated that she felt she had been the victim of biased policing. For the allegations, Officer 1 had a Rule 1 compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO203, investigative responsibility and case assignments, did not conduct an adequate investigation. The independent police monitor recommended the allegation be not sustained, and the department also determined that the allegation was not sustained. Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO101, unbiased policing, race. The independent police monitor recommended the allegation be exonerated, and the department determined that the allegation would be not sustained. Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO316, did not make medical treatment available to an individual. Both the independent police monitor and the department determined the allegation to be unfounded. And Rule 4, respect, stated to an individual that it might be a good idea for her to move out of Boulder. Both the independent police monitor and the department determined that the allegation would be exonerated. For Officer 2, allegation Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO203, investigative responsibility and case assignments, did not conduct an adequate investigation. This allegation was recommended to be sustained with verbal counseling by the independent police monitor, and the department also determined that it should be sustained with verbal counseling. And Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, General Order 101, unbiased policing, race. Both the independent police monitor and the department determined that this allegation should be exonerated. For Officer 3, violation alleged was Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, General Order 203, investigative responsibility and case assignments, did not conduct an adequate investigation. That allegation was sustained and recommended verbal counseling by the independent police monitor, and the department also determined that the allegation was sustained with verbal counseling. And for allegation of Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, General Order 101, unbiased policing, race, the independent police monitor recommended and the department determined that the allegation would be exonerated. And finally, our last case, MI 2023-014, is summarized by a limited duty Officer 1 was assigned to handle a 911 call regarding an upstairs-downstairs neighbor dispute. Officer 1 called and recorded his conversation with the 911 caller, who said that when she and her daughter descended from stairs from the 3rd to the 2nd floor, the 2nd floor resident yelled and cursed at her about noise and shoved the caller. The caller told Officer 1 that she immediately reported what happened to a 1st floor neighbor who also has issues with the 2nd floor resident. Officer 1 said police would try to get in touch with both the 2nd floor resident and other neighbor. Instead, Officer 1, who wrote the incident report, assigned Officer 2, who was in training under Officer 3's supervision, to issue the 2nd floor resident a summons. Officer 2 wrote and issued resident 2, the complainant, a summons without any additional investigation. The allegation against Officer 1 is Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, General Order 405, investigative process, did not conduct an adequate investigation. The independent police monitor recommended that the allegation be sustained and advised on verbal counseling, and the department also determined that the allegation should be sustained with verbal counseling. Former Officer number 2 had an allegation that Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, GO 405, investigative process, did not conduct an adequate investigation. Both the independent police monitor recommended and the department determined that that allegation should be not sustained. And Officer 3, Rule 1, compliance with values, rules, and general orders, General Order 405, investigative process, did not conduct an adequate investigation. The independent police monitor recommended and the department determined that that allegation should be not sustained. The independent police monitor also recommended that the Boulder Police Department counsel Officer 3, who has Officer 2's PTO should have exerted himself to ensure his trainee was taking proper action. The police department agreed to have a supervisor discuss the incident with both officers 1 and 3 for process improvement. The police legal advisor will also provide both officers training on legal standards for citations and arrests. And that is the end of the individual cases. And for the month of September, case statistics are the number of complaints that the independent police monitor classified was 3. Those were 3 misconduct classifications, 0 serious misconduct, and 0 community inquiries. The independent police monitor observed 1 interview, and the Boulder Police Department investigations that the independent police monitor deemed thorough and complete were 2, and case investigations that the Boulder Police Department closed were 5, and the open docket with the independent police monitor is as of September 30th, 2023. There are 13 cases that are open.
So panelists, with the review of cases, just to remind you that these meetings are our opportunity, excuse me, to offer any comments we have on the handling of the complaint, the fairness and thoroughness of an investigation, and the reasonableness of any adjudication related to any one of these cases. And so with that, I will open the floor if anyone has any comments on those cases. I think Madeline is trying to unmute. So.
Yeah. Going back to, I think it was the case 03, Sherry, the one where we talked about the hangman gang. I'm curious as to whether the word lynching was used either in the counseling or in any portion, because unless they realized, I heard it say that there was a racial issue. I heard him say that was said in the counseling, but we specifically wanted it understood that the racial reference was to lynching. And so I'm curious to know if as to whether or not that was specifically clarified in the counseling to that person.
I was not part of the conversation with the counseling for that officer. But that's something that I can see if the police department can answer that question.
That would be awesome. I mean, otherwise, I'm not sure that the point is made, and we want the counseling to be 100% effective so that the listener is receiving the total message. Otherwise, they could very well miss the point. So thank you for following up on that.
Thanks, Madeline. Panelists, any other comments? Okie dokie then. So back to Sherry. Hey, Sherry. Yeah. The feedback question.
Yeah, I think I was going to do that right now. Yeah. One of my understanding is that this is what Joey Lapari did, so then that's what Flo did, and now this is what I'm inheriting. But when it comes to the monitor's reporting, I would really like to hear from the panel, not necessarily today, but I mean, if people have thoughts today, we can do that too, but to think about, what information do you actually want to, hear from the monitor, and, what is the content that you want to hear, but also the format so that you can receive it in a way that is respectful of all of our times. Lizzie?
Hey, Sherry, I'm so glad you mentioned this. I was actually thinking this as you were going through, like, hey, maybe now's a good time to revisit it, since of course you inherited this format. So I have thoughts. I'll marinate a little bit, and maybe what's the best way, just to email you directly, or how would you like that follow-up feedback?
Sure. That seems an appropriate way for one individual to email me directly. I mean,
Great.
to each of you individually email me. But yeah, there's no reason that we have to do things just because that's the way that they've always been done.
I really appreciate the question, Sherry. Yes, and I look forward to sending some feedback your way too. Yeah, Sterling.
Do you guys think it's necessary to read all of the general orders other than just what the actual allegation or the complaint is? Instead of saying it's general order 305, it's an allegation of, inadequate investigation or unbiased policing, just to kind of save a little bit of time in terms of the actual presentation.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Sterling, and it's kind of back to the ordinance. So the challenge here is that this meeting is the only designated reporting time for the panel. And so that means for someone who is visually impaired, we need to read out the full report for their understanding and communication. And since the amendment we passed in January wasn't carried over into the new ordinance changes, where we really are narrowed into these meetings being the one opportunity where the panel can report out and discuss these cases. And so that's why we do that, despite, for those of us who are not visually impaired, I know that can take some time. But that's the reason behind it. We are exploring some other options of how to do like a dashboard of how to report cases through a dashboard through the Monitors Authority as under regular reporting. But that's something that we don't have in effect just now. So for now, it's all we have is the video and these public meetings. And so it's important that we read it out for folks.
But I am happy to hear people's suggestions. Part of the reason that I'm asking you this question is because also there are some updates and movement with the Independent Monitor's Office that I think you are interested in or would be interested in. So, but they don't really fit within that report. So I'm just going to share them with the group, but these are the types of things that I'm interested in, whether you want to hear about these type of initiatives in the future. So one thing that I also did that is I attended the department's first force review panel meeting, which the department's building out. They're trying to see what other jurisdictions are doing. And it was, I think it was a very fruitful endeavor. It's obviously going to evolve as the department tries to understand where it can get its best value from these force reviews. So what it is it's looking really at an incident in its totality. So it's not looking at it necessarily to be like punitive towards the officers, but to look to see if there are improvements in tactics and procedures and policy that they can learn from that incident. So there were many members of Boulder's brass, including their training officer or training sergeant, who were there to really look at this and discuss together, from the moment a 911 call came in until the end was the behavior of the department appropriate and as best it could be. So that's something that the department is pretty excited about moving forward with. And I was really pleased that while sitting in on that meeting, I wasn't just at the table, but they were a lot of the members were asking me for my opinion, as they acknowledged that I've been involved with more serious police incidents than they have the investigation of. So it was really a great experience to not just be there, but to actually feel like I really was at the table. Also, 2 cases recently were considered for referral to, again, very new, but a mediation alternative dispute type of outcome. So myself and the PSU Boulder Police Department, we talked about it and agreed that if the parties are interested in that, that's a way that we would try to facilitate proceeding for 2 complaints. So that is I think that's something that was on my mind for much farther down the road, but we had 2 cases come in that seemed to fit, from my experience running the mediation pilot program in Chicago, seemed to fit the sort of fact patterns that would be amenable to mediation or some other alternative dispute. So that maybe leapfrogged a little bit forward from when I thought that we'd actually be able to have some movement on it. But also related to the conversation about these independent police monitor reports is we are looking at doing some website updates for the entire police oversight system. One thing that I would like to do is to have more reporting out and being able sometime to have some sort of dashboard so that the public doesn't have to go through a 2-hour long video to try to get information, but instead can track cases and the work that we're doing. So I'm starting to do that. I think a lot of it is going to be some updates that are going to be done in the relative future, but with the idea of having some capacity for building out some better reporting out functions. But the reason I'm letting all of you know is because there's also, there's the independent monitors side of the website, but then there's also the police oversight panels side of the website. So Daniel at the co-chairs meeting suggested that would be the communications subcommittee. So that's something that I'm going to want to know, like how involved the panel wants to be, because I don't want to make decisions about how your side of the website should look unless you basically say just do it. So that's going to be something that the communications subcommittee apparently is going to, when everyone gets back to work, have some work to do pretty quickly. But I wanted to let you all know about that. So I don't know if this type of outside of that, report on cases if this is information that your group wants to hear about, or if there are other things that you want to hear about. But I'm definitely open towards trying to add more information into the report, or just sort of informally present to the group the way that I just did.
I'm all for anything you have that you feel would be important for us, for the public to know. I'm all for it. And I think it would be helpful and or useful to also include it in the visual report as well for folks, to help with engagement. And of course we get that in advance as panelists, so that's helpful. But yeah, I mean, I know I already said this on Friday, but none of the public were here. So panel and public, my opinion is if the monitor has something they want to report to us, I'm all for it, 100%.
Milan?
Yeah, I'm also, you mentioned the website and how I think that's really important for us to participate, especially maybe, I don't want to volunteer my friends on the communication and engagement committee, but I think it's important for us to have a say in that, and a look at it and make sure that it's very, it talks to everybody in our community. So yeah, I would love to be involved in that. And
Well,
thank you
you'll
for
be getting the invite for the communications meetings along with all members of the panel.
you. Yeah.
I just say it's refreshing to hear that we're always not going to do things the way we used to. So it's good to have someone in that seat. It's almost been like a year. So
Yeah, I think Flo did exactly what she was supposed to do, which is like keep the train on the tracks. But I as a person who's in the permanent position, I have more leeway, I think, to make changes.
You get to lay the track now.
Okay.
Any other final thoughts, questions, concerns for the monitor folks? Thank you, Sherry. Moving right along, panelists, we have two last minute items we wanted to add to the agenda. The first one is I will not be able to make next week's next month's November 8th meeting. I have a work commitment. And so what we did want to put out a request for, so Adasa will be leading that meeting, but wondered if there were any other panelists, and you can raise your hand now or email Adasa afterwards, but to volunteer to co-run the meeting. And also wanted to put out a call there as a reminder, our terms end, Hadassah and my terms end in February. And so that means two of you will need to step up to be the new co-chairs of the panel. So this is a great opportunity to dip your toes in that if you're interested. Hadassah, anything from you?
Just yeah, let me know if anybody, if you think you might be interested in co-chair. This is a great opportunity to kind of dip your toes in and see if you like hosting the meeting. But yeah, just reach out, let me know.
And moving along. Boom. Milan, your suspenseful question from the top of the meeting.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It might be something that I missed somewhere along the way, but during the last meeting, you mentioned, Daniel, that you and Hadassah had regular meetings with Farah, which I guess we were invited to, and I had no idea those meetings were, so they were not advertised or in the schedule and all that. So I had no idea those meetings were happening, and so I'm wondering if there is a place where I could find the notes or the minutes on that, the recordings. I don't know. So I'm just, I was just a little puzzled by that. I'm not sure I'm the only one in this case, but yeah, so I wanted to have more information about that.
Yeah, those are the co-chair meetings. So Farah's been coming to the co-chair meetings that you are invited to and are posted for the public to attend. So those are all posted in advance on the city website. You should be on the invitation, but those are also we've been extending that invitation at our meetings as well. The co-chair meetings are open to anyone to attend, and those are the ones that Farah has been sitting on as we do the administrative work. And as we've done in the past, Hadassah and I also make a point to always bring those anything we discuss at those meetings back to these meetings. Generally speaking, it's setting the agenda for these meetings are the big questions, or bringing forward any questions you all have for city staff. But again, yeah, all of our co-chair meetings are open for y'all. Like our committee meetings, they're not recorded. They're not recorded. But yeah, they're open public meetings. I know Lynn was at our last one. And they're posted to the website, and you should be getting those invitations through your calendar. If not,
I am now that Selena is here, but I'm not.
Yeah.
I was not all the way since March. I've never received them, and was not aware that we were invited. So I appreciate being invited to them now. And are there notes that we can refer to or anything like that for that? Or
we don't have notes beyond the agendas. We set the agendas, and then we report out anything that we discuss at those meetings, at these meetings. We could start, yeah, I mean, if it would be helpful, we could start keeping those notes for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just I'm not always available to go to all the meetings, so I would appreciate like a quick summary, or maybe a quick summary during the next meeting would be just fine, even if it said we just set up the agenda, or, but yeah, so I guess looking on the website, I was not aware that I needed to do that as a member of the panel, that I thought that, you know, all the information that I needed were put in the schedule. But I appreciate the clarification, Daniel, and thank you so much. I'll pay more attention to the website, I guess. Thanks.
Well, we can just make sure that that everyone gets the invites to.
I think
you know, all of
we're
those
getting
meetings.
it. We're getting them now that
Oh.
you and Lena are on board. It was just prior to that I was not aware of it.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. No, thanks.
Any other final thoughts, questions, concerns before we open it to public comment? Cool beans. Give me just a second to pull up the timer and the notes. Okay, public comment. So every member of the public will be asked if they'd like to comment and unmuted to answer. Public will get 2 unimpeded minutes to comment. If there's an interruption or loss of connection, we will stop the clock to make sure you get your full 2 minutes. The co-chair, me, will give a verbal notice of time at 20 seconds to the end of your 2 minutes. And we will ask the city facilitator, that'll be Selena, to mute you after 2 minutes. It's nothing personal. We just like to keep it fair for everyone. And panelists, just as a reminder, you can offer short responses at the end of a comment, and the co-chairs will pause after each comment to make sure you can get that in. Sorry, someone just messaged me. Oh yes, I do have the stopwatch. Sorry. I was just waiting a second. Can you all see that stopwatch okay? Cool.
Yes.
Perfect. Because that didn't work earlier. So we'll start with the top of my list. We'll start with John Herrick. John, we'll allow you to talk and you can unmute yourself. Would you like to give public comment this evening?
Hey all, no thanks. I'm just tuning in.
Thanks, John, and thank you for being here. Next up, we have, sorry, Amber Elise Carlson. We'll allow you to talk. Amber, you should be able to unmute. Would you like to give comment this evening?
Hi, Daniel. Thank you. I am just listening as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Amber. And finally, Lynn, you will be allowed to talk. You'll be able to unmute. Lynn, would you like to give comment?
Yeah, I was pretty upset because I was at the municipal lobby to find out when my appointment with Nuria was, 1 or 2 p.m. on the 14th of September. As it turned out, my appointment had been lost, but I tried by phone, I tried by email. I wasn't able to get, the only way I could find out when my appointment was go down there. And by going down there, an employee picked up my computer bag with $360 in it. It disappeared. This was 27 days ago, and my life's been completely upended since then. I can't trust the city at all. I know it was a city employee. Apparently, I found out yesterday that it was because that they picked up my bag because they thought it was their supervisor's bag, and then it disappeared, and they were not prosecuted. And I'm just furious. Also, I have 2 complaints into the police officers who took my case report. Nuria called it in because afterwards the security alarm tripped. It was a mistaken trip, but we all had to evacuate. That's when I found my bag was gone. I was only there for like a half an hour, and someone came and picked it up. There was no one in the room. It's unbelievable that something like this could happen. It's like my computer bag beamed up. And I've not been allowed to see the
20
video.
seconds, Lynn.
Yeah, well, see, 3 minutes is not enough. I'm completely upset with the police, with the whole system. I think there needs to be major reform. And in 2 minutes I can do nothing about it. So I'm helpless. But I can tell you this, I see where
Thank
Lisa.
you, Lynn. Thank you so much, Lynn, for your comments. You can also, if you'd like to send us more comments through our email. Sorry, let me pull that up really quick for you. You can also send us, the panel, any additional comments you have to our email address, which is policeoversightpanel@bouldercolorado.gov. And I'm sorry for the loss of your bag as well. Panelists, any other comments related to public comment? Cool beans. Any other final thoughts before we close out this meeting? I look forward to seeing y'all next Thursday if you can make it. If you can't make it, no worries. I know it's a big time commitment and we all have very busy lives. Thank you very much for being here this evening, and we'll see y'all soon. Have a good one.